Hello everyone, my name is Diane Yamhill. Welcome to my presentation on the influence of television on religion and religious practices. First and foremost, I would like to apologize for the way I'm doing this presentation. I have tried several times through Google Meets and Zoom to record, but unfortunately I couldn't find any record button, and so I had to do it this way. But I will still make it work. So, so, what is religion? Religion is considered to be a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes to a supreme importance. Belief and principle are major component of what goes into a religion. Religion is now heavily present in television entertainment such as movies, music videos, um, and even television shows. Religion is also considered to be an important factor when it comes to building one's identity because it incorporates belief and principle that goes into making someone who they are. But how has television portrayed religion over the years? Let's look back at the 9/11 incident. After that accident, the image of some of the religion that were practiced before changed. For instance, Islam. Muslims were considered to be terrorists, people who create chaos after that incident because of who initiated that incident, which are Muslim. So after that incident, a lot of bad stereotypes were put on Muslim people, and that changed the way Islam were perceived around the world. Um, as opposed to Pope Francis, who is someone who is highly respected um, in the entire world. When he goes around to his trip to other countries, he is welcomed with open arms. He is considered to be almost an idol. People almost worship him. They respect him. They praise him because he's considered to be someone who's close to God. This just shows. This just goes about showing the difference in perception in different religions, and all of that come from the stereotypes that have been attached to those specific religions. Now, here are my research questions. How is religion and religious practices portrayed on Jane the Virgin? And in what way is the image of the Bible portrayal of the show Jane the Virgin similar or different from reality? The purpose of this research is to critically analyze the first season of the show and to examine how the show's portrayal of the Bible and religious theories are similar or different from reality. Now, my thesis for this research is the following. Jane the Virgin follows the path of studies that have shown that television can potentially influence our society's religious belief through religious symbols and theories present on the show. Now, a little bit of background about the show. It is an American telenovela that was aired on Netflix in 2014 with 5 seasons. It showcased the main character, who is Jane Villanueva, a religious young Latina who is also the daughter of a teen mom who gets taught by her grandmother not to repeat her mother's mistakes. But at the age of 23 years old, while still being a virgin, she gets accidentally inseminated and then becomes pregnant. For this research, I used the agenda setting theory, which was developed in 1968 by the scholars Max Kahn and Donald Shaw. The agenda setting theory was born and built on the notion that the mass media sets the agenda for what people should care about. But for the purpose of this research, I decided to focus more on the media agenda settings, which state that the media determines the agenda for which stories are considered important. For my methodology, I decided to do a textual analysis. And I will have two units of analysis for this research. The first one are symbols, specifically biblical symbols present in the show, and also language, words, and themes present in the show. My mode of analysis is the textual analysis. And the textual analysis is a method that is used to describe, interpret, and understand a text. And what is considered a text? A text can be anything. It can be a video on television, it can be an article in a journal, it can be something that we hear on the radio. Anything that contains language, symbols, is considered a text. Now, about my data collection. This data collection specifically is only for from the first episode of the first season of the show, and I decided to use to focus on biblical names, words, and symbols that are present in that episode. And so when I did that, I noticed several interesting facts. So 10 minutes, only 10 minutes after the beginning of the first episode, the word God was used 5 times, and the symbol of the white flower, which here represents the virginity, the purity of Jane, was mentioned 1 time. Going towards the 20 minutes after the show started, there were no more mention of God or no more appearance of the white flower. But going to 30 minutes, the word God was mentioned 10 times, and the white flower appeared 3 times. And going toward the end of the episode, the word God was mentioned 12 times, and the flower appeared 4 times. Results and discussion. So there are several themes that I identified throughout the first season of this show. The first theme is the theme of faith. Faith is something that is present throughout the entire show. As Jane, her family, her mom, and her grandmother are really religious, and they look up to God for advice and counsel. This idea of having faith that everything happens for a reason, that God has a plan for every one of us, is something that is deeply rooted in their religion and in their lives. The second theme is the theme of virginity as a symbol of purity, and that is seen through the image of the white flower that is given to Jane by her grandmother when she was young. That white flower symbolized her purity, her innocence as a young girl, and her virginity that she should maintain until she gets married. And lastly, the symbol of marriage, divorce. The symbol of marriage and divorce is also present in the show, as we see that Jane's boss, Raphael, is married and wants to get a divorce from his wife. And we also see that Jane wanted to wait until marriage to have a child and be pregnant, which did not happen. But this idea of getting married before she gives birth is still something that she wants to achieve. And the symbol of Immaculata, also Immaculate Conception, is also something that we see a lot throughout the show. As Jane got pregnant while she was still a virgin, and that is considered in the show as a miracle, something that we should be amazed by, because it's not something that we see often. So that symbol gave her an image that she necessarily didn't want it, but that was attached to her anyway, and that she had to deal with. I also observed some patterns throughout my research. The first pattern is the image of the white flower, which I previously mentioned, which represent purity, innocence, and Jane's virginity. That flowers makes a lot of appearance throughout the entire show, either to remind Jane of the promise that she couldn't keep to her grandmother, or to remind her of how unique her situation is. Also, the repeated use of the word God, which we see a lot in the show, just goes about showing how deeply religion is incorporated in the show, and how God plays such an important role in their lives. And also the pattern of prayer. Every time something bad happened, they will pray or they will ask God to help them. So this idea of praying when things are not the way they're supposed to be, when things go bad, is something that we see a lot in the show. So nonverbal religious symbol, the church, the rosary, the white flower, and the cross are symbols that we see a lot throughout the entire show, the first season of the show. Um, like Jane went to church to talk to the priest before she got married. Her grandmother uses the rosary to pray all the time. The symbol of the white flower, which we can see right here, that her grandmother gave her as a symbol of purity, and the cross, which also appears a lot throughout the show. Some key scenes that we should keep in mind are the first scene of the very first episode in the prologue, when the white flower was given to Jane by her grandmother. It just reminds us of that notions of maintaining her virginity as a sign of purity and honor. Also, Jane discovering that she had been accidentally inseminated is also an important scene in this first episode, because that incident created a whole bunch of scenarios and a whole bunch of theories and conception that arise throughout the show. It linked her to the image of a religious messiah, Virgin Mary, someone who is just miraculous. And lastly, the precana counseling, which is observed and which happens before she gets married. So she went to see a priest to get advice about marriage and how she should go into this marriage before she actually got married. And I found that specific scene interesting because they mentioned in the show that the priest never got married. He never got married at all. So I found that odd, that how can someone who never got married, who has no experience of what marriage is whatsoever, find himself giving advice to a young couple who wish to get married? That was a little bit odd to me, and that it kind of gave me it kind of put me back to what is going on in today's world, having priests giving advice to married people, married couple, when they have never been in a relationship, having religious people giving advice about subject that they never experienced. It's something that we see a lot in today's world, and I found that that was really interesting. So an interesting fact that I noticed again is this idea of the white flower, which appears a lot throughout the show, and the pattern of the white flowers keeps appearing in most episodes, either to remind Jane of the promise she couldn't keep, or to remind her of how unique her situation is, and it became a symbol of both purity and a symbol of sin, because every time she would think about the advice that her grandmother gave her, she would look at that flower and kind of remind herself that she did everything that she was supposed to do. That pregnancy was an accident; it's not something that she wanted. So in other ways, she followed every single guideline that her grandmother gave her. But then at the same time, when she looks at it, it represents a symbol of sin, because every time she wants to do something that goes against her grandmother's guidelines, there's always this image of the white flowers and petals that are falling down that just reminds her that this is not the path that you should be following. And so I kind of try to link that to the idea of the Bible and the idea of the cross. Every time people look at the Bible or look at the cross, they go to the Bible for guidance. They go to the Bible for to get resources, to get reminding of what the right thing is and the wrong thing is. But every time they do something bad, they also look at the Bible, and that kind of remind them that they're not following the right path. So I thought that was interesting. So, to conclude my presentation, I would just like to reestablish what my theory was. So, my theory established that the media shapes and influences how we think by prioritizing or emphasizing certain words, symbols, and themes. This show has changed the image of religion into a more open-minded subject whose rules cannot always be followed, but every single mistake made from it teaches us a lesson. Some concept present in the Bible, like the idea of immaculate conception, um, has also been seen in this show, but with a little bit of exaggeration, I would say, from my perspective, because that symbol, that idea of the immaculate conception, became something that was idolized, something that was miraculous, something that also became a marketing product, because you will see in the show that they will take a picture with her, pay her for hugs, pay her for a picture, pay her to just touch them. So she became something to be sold, something that can be used as a market product, and that changes the idea, the original idea of immaculate conception. So that's one main difference that I noticed. Also, the aspect of faith is also heavily emphasized in this show, as the languages God's plans are repeated multiple times over the episode. It just goes about to show us how religion is really deeply rooted into the show, and how important it is to the main characters of the show. And I think it also ties back to the reality, because religion is something that a lot of people consider to be a major and important factors of their lives. And so everyone believes that God is there for them, God has a plan for them. And so seeing that in this show kind of put me in that put me back in that mindset that it's also something that we see in our daily lives, how much importance people give to God and faith and following religious guidelines and those ideas. So thank you for watching my presentation. Again, I apologize for the way it is done, but I wanted to get it done. So thank you for watching my presentation. If you have any questions, please email me um, to my email, which is dianekyoungkill01 at